So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhubaneswar, this is the chapter entitled Chant Hare Krishna on Fight. In Bhubaneswar, just before 3 a.m. on the morning of January the 30th, Srila Prabhupada began dictating the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. One of his servants in the next room heard through the wall and became so excited that he awakened the other devotees. The dividing wall between the two rooms was about 6 feet high, with an opening above the wall up to the thatched roof. Light from Srila Prabhupada's room shone into the next room through that opening, and his voice, although faint, could be clearly heard. He was dictating a short description of each chapter of the 10th canto. The first chapter, which has 69 verses, he began, describes Maharaj Parikshit's eagerness to learn about the incarnation of Lord Krishna, and it also tells how Kamsa killed the 6 sons of Devaki because of his fear of being killed by her 8th child. The second chapter contains 42 verses. Prabhupada's patient description of each of the 90 chapters was the epitome of faithful rendering of parampara knowledge, without concoction, interpretation, addition or subtraction. Therefore he spoke with the same full faith that the original speaker of the Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, had spoken with 5,000 years ago to Maharaj Parikshit. Simply by chanting or repeating Krishna Katha, Prabhupada was saying, one is liberated from the contamination of Kali Yuga. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness. To hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. Sitting up in their blankets, the devotees listened. They would not return to sleep. It was an important historic moment. The 10th canto begins 5,000 years ago, when the entire world was oppressed by demoniac rulers, and Prabhupada was comparing the situation then to the present situation. His words were faint but not weak. He was unhesitating, sure. Without reference to the supreme power of the personality of Godhead, Prabhupada dictated, demons assert themselves to be independent kings and presidents, and thus they create a disturbance by increasing their military power. When such disturbances are very prominent, Krishna appears. At present also, various demonic states all over the world are increasing their military power in many ways, and the whole situation has become distressful. Therefore, Krishna has appeared by his name in the Hare Krishna movement, which will certainly diminish the burden of the world. Philosophers, religionists, and people in general must take to this movement very seriously, for man-made plans and devices will not help bring peace on earth. Srila Prabhupada was like a field general in his tent, and his disciples were like his infantrymen. They knew where they were hearing his battle strategies even before the information was disseminated through the chain of command. They were thrilled. With faith they heard that just as Krishna had defeated the demoniac rulers, so the Krishna consciousness movement would counteract the demoniac culture of the present age. Later on in the morning walk, one of the devotees mentioned to Prabhupada that they were planning to put his name on a sign on the door saying that on January the 30th at 2:50 a.m. Srila Prabhupada began the 10th canto. Prabhupada was pleasantly surprised that they'd heard him. Krishna's flute can be heard in the 10th canto, said Prabhupada, and the chapters 29 through to 34 are the smiling face of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, this is chapter 13, Rahugana converses with Jad Bharat. And we're on text 12, text 13, sorry. Ayonya Vita Vyatisanga Vrida. Ayonya Vita Vyatisanga Vrida. Viranu Bando Vivahan Mitash Cha. Viranu Bando Vivahan Mitash Cha. Advani Amushmin Uru Kritra Vita. Advanyamushmin Uru Kritra Vita. Bado Pasagir Viharan Vipana. Bado Pasagir Viharan Vipana. What's it going? Yeah. Ayanya Vita Vyatisanga Vridha. Vairanu Bando Vivahan Mitascha. Advanya Mushman Urukritra Vita. Bado Pasagya Viharan Vipana. Anyonya Vita Vyatasanga Vridha. Vairanu Bando Vivahan Mitascha. Advanya Mushmin Urukritra Vita. Bado Pasagya Viharan Vipana. Anyonya Vita Vyatisan Shanga Vrida. Vairanu Bando Vivahan Mitascha. Anvanya Mushmin Urukritra Vita. Bado Pasagya Viharan Vipana. Anyam Vita Vita Shanga Vrida. Vairanu Bando Vivahan Mitascha. Anyam Yushmin Urukritra Vita. Bado Pasaga Viharan Vipana. Anyonya Vita Vita Sanga Vita. Viranu Bando Mitascha. Advanya Misan Urukritra Vita. Bado Pasagya Viharan Vipana. Ayonya with one another. Vita Vyati Shanga, by monetary transactions. Vrida, increased. Vaira Anubandha, one is encumbered by enmity. Vivahan, sometimes marrying. Mita, one another. Cha, and. Advani, on the path of material existence. Amushmin, that. Uru Kritra, by great difficulties. Vitabada, by scarcity of money. Upasage, by diseases. Viharan, wandering. Vipana, one becomes fully embarrassed. Translation: due to monetary transactions, relationships become very strained and end in enmity. Sometimes the husband and wife walk on the path of material progress, and to maintain their relationship they work very hard. Sometimes due to scarcity of money or due to diseased conditions, they are embarrassed and almost die. Responsively, please. Due to monetary transactions, relationships become very strained and end in enmity. Sometimes the husband and wife walk on the path of material progress, and to maintain their relationship, they work very hard. Sometimes due to scarcity of money or due to diseased conditions, they are embarrassed and almost die. Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this material world, there are many transactions between peoples and societies, as well as between nations, and gradually those end in enmity between the two parties. Similarly, in the marriage relationship, monetary transactions are sometimes overpowered by the dangerous conditions of material life. One then becomes diseased or monetarily embarrassed. In the modern age, most countries have developed economically, but due to business exchanges, relationships seem to be strained. Finally, wars are declared between nations, and as a result of these upheavals, there is destruction all over the world, and people suffer heavily. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmanitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutalaya Swayam Apakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in the same vein as the last few comments made by Jan Bharat, this again is painting a dark picture of material life, or a realistic picture anyway of material life, and the relationships are strained due to monetary transactions. So, and then also so relationships suffer because of money, and relationship between husband and wife suffers due to lack of money, and scarcity of money, and disease conditions cause embarrassment, and then they almost die. So, it's very sobering for the king is hearing all this. He's, if anyone's going to be illusioned about material life, it's going to be those who are in the most opulent. Well, actually, it's interesting, the story of the Beatles. They achieved success very young in life, and they realized that it wasn't what they were looking for. And one of them was making the comment, it may have been George Harrison actually, that people spend their entire life trying to get what they received very, very early on, and they were able to realize, at least some of them anyway, that this wasn't what they were looking for. So most people will just strive for that. So the king is in a position where he's in the best position in society, most opulent, most power, most fame. Everyone takes him very seriously. Everyone's there as beck and call. And so he's waking the king up. It's interesting that up until now, as far as we know, according to the Bhagavatam, Jad Bharat hasn't really, he didn't even let his father know that he knew all this, that he was so intelligent. His father tried like anything to teach him, and he just pretended to be a dumb person. And Jad is it means dull, doesn't it? Jad Bharat. Jad is the word referring to someone who's playing a dullard. So suddenly, the head of society, the most important person in the country, he decides he's going to let him know that actually he's quite intelligent and articulate and spiritually realized. So it's interesting, Lord Chaitanya, in the same way he waited to speak to the big heads like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Saraswati. And then as soon as you convince them, then everybody else gets convinced as well. So he's convincing the king about the importance of spiritual life and the futility of material life. But then in the Bhagavad Gita it also says that we shouldn't disturb those who are too materially attached, but engage them in works of devotion so that gradually they become purified and they come onto the path. So we have to be strategic in how we let people disseminate the information to bring people onto the path. And sometimes it's like gradually, step by step, small baby steps, trying to encourage people to go in a more spiritual direction in their lives. So anyway, the king's getting it straight. He's more educated, at least, than the average citizen. But the person that the Bhagavad Gita is talking about is someone who's so materially attached that if you try to break their illusions and their attachments, they would become upset, maybe even antagonistic. So in this case, the king is quite happy to accept the direction that's being given by Jad Bharat. So Jad Bharat obviously was intelligent enough to understand that the king would be able to accept it. And so he decided to reveal the truth. The interesting thing about the king, it reminds me of that story of the king who was naked. And he was going along on a pompous ceremony, displaying these clothes that he wasn't wearing, pretending he knew that they were there, because only the most intelligent people see the clothes. And then somebody finally stood up and said, "The king's naked." It was just a young boy, and he wasn't aware that unless you were very intelligent, you wouldn't be able to see the clothes. Anyway, so when the king is made aware that it's an illusion, then he can start to kind of break it gently to all the citizens in one way or another. That's the duty of the king anyway, that's what he's supposed to do. It's said in the Veda literatures, don't become a king, a guru, a father, a teacher, unless you can deliver your dependent. So it is the duty of anyone in any position of responsibility that has other people that are following him, that he becomes self-realized and aware of the goal of life. If not, it can be a bit disturbing when you're a child, you look up to your parents as knowing everything, and as you start to grow up, you start to become more and more aware of how little they know about what life is all about, really. So it's a little bit like being in a sinking boat, and you pull somebody into the boat, and they say, "Oh, where are we going?" And you say, "Well, I'm not quite sure, actually." "Okay, well, how are we going to navigate the boat?" "I'm not quite sure about that either." So you don't pull somebody up on top of a boat that's sinking, that you can't steer, until you've at least found out where the hole is and plugged it, and have learnt a little bit about boating, and then you can think about bringing other people on board. So that's the responsibility of anyone who's has people under him. Anyway, so the king accepts. The king is happy actually to be relieved of these illusions. So that's good that he was sincere enough Srila Prabhupada once said the hardest person to wake is a person who's pretending to sleep. So if you're trying to wake somebody up from an illusion and they don't want to see that it's an illusion, then you're not going to get very far if they want to stay in illusion. So the emphasis in this particular text is on how relationships are strained due to monetary transactions. So that's interesting, the significance of pointing out how money erodes relationships. Money is it's become a very demeaning factor in society. The whole human endeavour now is based upon financial viability. So if you make a car that lasts a lifetime, okay, it's really nice, but we're not going to make a lot of money. You make a light bulb that you don't need to change, a razor blade that never gets blunt. You know, it's great. You find a pill that people can take and they never get sick. It's really good, yeah, but we don't make any money on it, so it just gets thrown out the window. So financial viability undermines everything that the human being is striving for. So then everyone's just, okay, well, maybe it's the truth, maybe it's not the truth, but I've got these letters over my name, and we've just discovered a bone in soil that's 350 million years old, so listen guys, bury it and don't say a word. So then we shift from bettering ourselves and becoming happier and more fulfilled in human life to just what's going to make the most money. So everything is reduced to that in the end. If it's not going to make money, then we're not interested. If you can make something that breaks really fast, so they need to buy another one, then great, build that. And you build something else and it lasts and it does the job and you never need to change it, well, that's no use, you know. Like Tesla was looking at free energy, how you can generate free energy, and nobody was interested in free energy. You don't make a lot of money on free energy. Any questions or comments? We've only got a few minutes. But so it's the whole mood of this chapter. Rahugana is he's breaking. Rahugana is getting his illusions smashed, and the garish reality of material life has been shown to him. So
it's interesting the comparison between families and nations. Yes, it can extend itself. When everything's going well in the family, if they're materially motivated, then that's fine. But when it don't, when it's not.
yeah.
Then, if the husband stops earning, or even one of the partners becomes sick, then you see if they really care for each other.
Yeah.
And the same with countries, generally even most of the countries, because they only enter into some kind of deal if it's going to benefit them.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, then cut the deal if there's any problem, cut the more.
Yeah.
It's quite sad that people's relationships are so shallow that it's based on people having good health and wealth. If that's there, then people consider that I'm not going to hang out with this one, this one's got cancer, we're not having an affair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just wondering what can international society for Krishna consciousness do for the world, for people and for countries in that regard? What can we bring to the table?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, monetary transactions. We don't buy and sell to each other within the community, at least not so much. So I was just thinking about this yesterday. Our relationships are more dadati patiginati guyamakati prajati bongtai pochai cheva sadvatim pratilakshanam. Rupa Goswami says that. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that the international society has been established just to facilitate these 6 living exchanges. So they're not selling each other gifts, they're giving each other gifts, you know. And so we're showing an exemplary way that our society should function. It should function on this basis. If people were going around, like we did the last block of foundation forgiveness course the other day. And Mahaprabhu was saying, can you imagine what it would be like to live in a world where everybody was just forgiving everybody, where nobody resented anybody, nobody was harbouring grudges against anybody, everybody was just forgiving and saying, no, it's okay, it's not a problem, let's just work together, I know you didn't mean that. And so that's what the Six Living Exchanges is all about, that maybe you think, oh, maybe I offended the devotee, I'll go and get him a gift, you know. And if you do things because you, out of love, out of compassion, not because you're feeling intimidated or there's going to be some financial gain or lack of financial gain. Shishikoditai Maya Pashashiki. Then to interact with people on that basis, heart to heart, doing something just because you want to do it, because you want to enrich in that other person's life and do something wonderful for them. Well, that is the human nature, the divine nature, is to become enlivened by contributing to the well-being of somebody else, and it's the highest type of happiness and satisfaction. Whereas when things are selfish and it's all based upon you and at the expense of somebody else, it's not actually happiness, it's just suffering. People are being confused into missing out on the deeper, more fulfilling aspects of human interaction and exchange. So we have to show by example, so that when people come into our association, into our community, they think, wow, this is what I've been looking for all my life, you know. It's like one big... See, people are looking for a family, but they say the problem with family is you don't get to choose them. So you may be stuck with an uncle that just drives you round the bend, you know, but he's your uncle, you can't change that. So you either never see your uncle ever again, or you learn how to get on with him. So in the community it's a little bit different, because we get to choose to take to this lifestyle, and we have a lot of things in common, maybe a lot more than with our relatives. So in that sense we're at an advantage, and then the family can become, the relationships in that type of a family can become much deeper.
Prabhupada said that, you know, even if everything in ISKCON was finished, they would start again because the books have been out.
Yeah.
Or they received that book Salted Bread. The devotees were incarcerated and they had no facility whatsoever, but it didn't depend on any material facility. They were still trying to live a devotional life. They would use toothpaste or tilak, and
Yeah.
they would make these little bread balls into japa beads.
Yeah.
So they'd find a way.
Yeah.
Just like ourselves, if we ever got nicked, we would just like take a strip of cloth and make some beads out of it and just sit and chant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she doesn't have there's no material impediment to this movement.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a nice story Navina Narada was telling us. Somebody was distributing photocopied Bhagavad Gitas that had been stapled together, and they went over, and this was in Russia, and the devotees went over and said, Hari Bol, Prabhu, and the Russian persons didn't know what that meant, you know, and they said, would you like to come back with some prasadam? And what is prasadam? And what had happened was he'd read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, thought it was fantastic, and felt that it needed to be distributed. So he photocopied it, stapled the pages together, and went out. So Navina Narada was saying, even if you think, oh, there's so many things wrong with the ISKCON and this, that, and it's failing in this way and that way, once the books go out, sincere souls will realize its importance, and one way or another Lord Chaitanya's prophecy will be fulfilled, you know. But Srila Prabhupada does refer to the ISKCON as being a branch of the Chaitanya tree. And then, like we were reading just then in the Lilamrita, Prabhupada was saying in the 10th canto, just as Krishna killed all the demoniac influences, so the International Society And we will kill not through bullets, but through books. The books will be our bullets and our bombs. And the more that go out, sooner or later they'll go off, just like time bombs at the right time. Maybe something happens and there's a big upset, just like we're seeing now. Our society, the whole global situation is actually very precarious, and it doesn't take much of a fluctuation for everything to suddenly break down very easily, you know. They say that if one of these flares on the sun, a solar flare, just suddenly went really high, which they can do at times, it would knock out all the electricity, Wi-Fi and all that kind of thing, and then everyone would just be, I mean, how much is going on now because of that, and suddenly that's not there, and everything just crashes. So it's it's actually very precarious, the whole situation, the way it is right now. So if those books go out, and they're sitting there on the bookshelf, and there's a big upset, and then people are thinking, well, what is life all about? I thought we just had to go to work and pay the bills, and as long as we don't murder anybody, we'll be okay. If there is a God, I'm sure he won't mind. I'm a nice guy. I wash my socks every week. So then when they're distracted from, well, normally they are distracted, but when they're not so distracted by what's going on around them and the system isn't working anymore, then they get a chance to really ask questions. And Prabhupada's books are full of answers. But you can't give people answers to questions they haven't asked. So you have to wait sometimes until they ask the question. If you try and give somebody an answer, if you go up to someone and say, 42, and they say, what? And then you say, 7 plus 9 minus 3, and you give them a whole formula, and then equals 42. Then they say, okay, but they have to first of all want to formulate something, and then you can give them the answer, you see. So until people are at the stage where they're asking questions, but when they do, there's a lot of answers. I remember when I was first reading Srila Prabhupada's books, a lot of questions I'd had as a child that I'd just decided, look, just shelve that. You're never going to find the answer to that out. No one, people would even think you were mad to ask it, so don't even, just forget that one. And that question, you can forget that one. And is God aware of what we think? Or is he only aware of what we're doing when we're in church? No one seems to know. Okay, forget that one. And then Srila Prabhupada, I remember reading, Krishna is aware of our psychic movements. Oh, okay, great. That was the answer. So it reminded me what the question was, and then reminded me, and then answered the question. So the books are there. The books have all the answers.
So just as you're making that statement, I was thinking the same thing, that when I first read Srila Prabhupada's books, it was answering questions which were prominent in my mind, but it was also answering questions which I hadn't thought of, which may have been buried in very deep, or at least I hadn't really conceived of. And I think this shows the importance of this book in Prabhupada's books, is because if people are not asking the questions, Prabhupada's asking them and then answering them. So he's basically reawakening their intelligence and their spiritual life simply by reading.
Yeah.
Not even the book, perfect question, perfect answer, at the end of the books that are there with Prabhupada. You pose the question or give the answer to something which is in there. Shows the importance of that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are questions we have as a child that were unanswered from a previous lifetime. And we just, I remember when I was very young, actually, I was in Digmore in Skelmersdale, and I was looking at the grass, and I was thinking, at one time that grass wasn't there must have just been soil. And then I thought of the whole earth as just an expanse of soil before anything had grown, because everything that grows had to start from a seed. So before the seed, there was just soil. I was thinking, so at one time the earth must have been just a ball of soil. And I was thinking, well, at one time there probably wasn't a ball of soil either. And then you remove all the balls of soil, all the planets. At one time the universe must have just been vacant, just a dark abyss, silent, unending darkness. And I was contemplating how did it all just suddenly pop out, blue skies and trees and butterflies. How did that just come out of nothing, And I was deducing, the only thing that comes out of nothing are thoughts. that I had experienced so far at about 3 years old. But these were like really grown-up thoughts, you know. I was thinking, therefore, God must have thought it into existence then. It must be God thinking everything into existence. So at that age, I don't think I was mature enough to really have figured that out. That was something that was carrying on, you know. And then there'll be questions as well that you've had, and they'll carry on. And then sometimes it may be many, many lifetimes, and suddenly now Srila Prabhupada is going to give the answer. And that's the Sattva Guna. As you go into the mode of goodness, all the gates become illuminated with knowledge. So the gates are all ways that we're receiving information. And then we're able to assimilate that information properly. Ratiratamyata pratiyata, Krishna says, seed verse of the Bhagavatam. If you see it connected with me, then it's real. If you see it not connected with me, understand it's my shadow and illusion, which appears to be in darkness.
It's interesting that those in ignorance think chaos to be the cause of everything, whereas those who are theistic or who in knowledge consider there to be order in everything.
Yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta said an atheist can see God nowhere and a theist can see God everywhere. So you can see, everything can remind you of God if you're in the proper consciousness, and you can see how He's working through everything. Just one day I was going around the doors and a bee caught the light. It was in midair and the bee had caught the light, and what it done, it made the wings arc. So you could see this bee body with 4 circles of light. Couldn't see the wings. They were fluttering so fast. And it was really, really mystical, and I was thinking, that's actually really cool, that a little bug like that has so much maneuverability. And I mean, if a man made that, he'd be getting all kinds of Nobel Prizes, you know. If somebody paints, we come in tomorrow and there's a new painting on the wall, and someone says, well, it just happened by chance. No, everyone would just think he was crazy, you know. And the painting, if it was a painting of a flower, what is a 2-dimensional representation of oil on canvas to the flower? The flower gives fragrance, it has texture, you can maybe boil it up and have a tea with it. And what can you do with a painting? You can't smell it, it just feels like canvas with paint on top. If you put it in a kettle and boil it up, it's not going to make nice tea. So they won't accept that the painting happened by accident. But you give them a flower, oh yeah, that's just some molecules that bump together. So it's so silly, you know. But by us leading a more conscious, God-conscious life and raising our level of consciousness, it will have a ripple effect on the whole atmosphere. Because we noticed when we were doing Sankirtan, every time we went near a town that was by a Buddhist temple, the people always seemed to be nicer and more mellow, and I was thinking, if that's the effect that can have, imagine if they were all chanting and praying and taking prasadam and worshipping the deity. What type of an effect is that going to have on all the people that live in that area, you know? So your monetary transactions, you see, it's interesting. Maharaj Parikshit said to Kali, he said, okay, well look, I won't kill you. And Kali says, well, that's all very well, but I can't go anywhere in the kingdom because you don't allow any of the nonsense that I want to do. And he says, okay, anywhere there's gold. Gold means money because we don't even get to see gold these days. I mean, it's supposed to represent. So anywhere there's money, Kali will be there. You can, if you just decided, oh, well, I'd like to see how Kali works. Okay, well, just get £10 million and we'll put it in the field down there outside the Karuna Bhavan. Just leave it in the field, £10 million, and then just put some CCTV cameras up and just watch what happens. And then you'll see Kali. People will be walking past with the dog and then they'll see it and they'll be looking around. They'll be back up with a bin liner. And then somebody else comes up and they start punching him, A bit like Black Friday, fighting over TV screens and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's what, as soon as there's a lot of money, then watch out, because Kali's breathing down your shoulder. He's just breathing down your neck, waiting to jump in there and ruin everything,
It's interesting because one of the things with Kali is allowed to reside is gold. And the whole
So it's all based upon Kali, really. It's all Kali Puja. Everyone's worshipping Kali. Kali wants worship by, it's called in the Bhagavad Gita in the 16th chapter, a Suchi Vrat. So we do Suchi Vrat, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat, no gambling. And then we worship Vishnu by doing that. So worshippers of Kali, they do a Suchi Vrat. Every day I have to be dirty, illicit sex, intoxication, eat meat, gamble. If I don't do those 4 things every day, I'm not really, as a disciple of Kali, I'm not really pulling my weight here. I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, so people feel like that at the end of the day. Did I have illicit sex? Did I take intoxication? Oh, it was a good day then. Okay, that's good. It wasn't wasting my time there. You know, you go to a party, and if you do those 4 things, then I had a great time. You know, if you come back from the party and you didn't get a chance to do any of those 4 things, how was the party? It was terrible. I didn't get drunk. I didn't get any illicit sex. There was no good food and no gambling. Useless, waste of time. So that's a Suchi Vrat. So they vow to unclean work. And it's unclean because it's contaminating the consciousness. It's involving you more into the material energy. We're trying to extricate ourselves out of the material energy, not further embroil ourselves. As Srila Prabhupada said, the more you try to control Maya, the more you become entangled in her complexities. So it's like a spider in a web and then a fly in the spider's web. And if he just stays still and doesn't do anything, then he's like the impersonalist. Okay, I'm not going to interact with anything. As soon as he starts wriggling, he becomes more entangled, and then the spider comes along. Oh, what's going on here? So the best thing is to get out the web. Don't just stay motionless. How is that fulfilling your real potential as a person? To just neutralize everything and just don't get into anything, don't be attracted to anything, just stay austere, read the Vedanta and just meditate on being Narayan. So get the fly out, free the fly. Yeah, so interesting monetary transactions, they can erode relationships very easily. So it's always better to give. If you're thinking, oh, this is useless now, maybe I can sell this to one of the devotees. And then you think, well, for how much I'm going to get for it, I'm probably better off just giving it as a gift. And that way, instead of getting 20 quid, I get some special blessings by being kind to the devotees. So that's going to be more valuable. What can you get with 20 quid? Not a lot. But if you touch a devotee's heart by being kind to him, then that's much more valuable. But that's what's happened today. We've taken quantity and we've swapped it with quantity. Quantity instead of quality. So now we have a lot of stuff, but it's all rubbish. Before we didn't have so much stuff, but it was valuable. So you can have a few valuable things, or you can have a load of rubbish things. And it can be like that with relationships as well. You want to have a load of rubbish relationships with cheap followers and admirers, or a few genuine friends. You know? Everyone's friend is nobody's friend. So yeah, it's not. Bhagavatam always has a happily ever after, and happily ever after is that when you break free from the illusion and you realize the material world is a dark place, then you can get out. Bhagavatam is just trying to let you know that you're actually in prison here, and how to get out the prison. So that's actually very positive. If you break into a prison and you're telling all the prisoners, and some of the prisoners are saying, well, actually, I think it's quite nice. Like, you know, you're ruining my. I had a nice scene going here. I get my food 3 times a day. I've got a nice cell. They've just repainted it, and you're telling me that it's terrible. Yeah, but look outside. Look, there's a whole world out there. Beautiful trees, grass. There's a lake. Get out and go over there. Go and enjoy yourself, you know. There's a book called Lost Connections, and they did a test on prisoners, and they were trying to find out, well, what makes people depressed. So they had this big long building, and on one side of the building, it was facing the prison compound. All the windows were facing the prison compound. on the other side of the building, all the windows were facing this beautiful view. So they put the prisoners in these different cells, and there was 27% more prisoners suffering from depression that had to look out at the cell, at the compound, than the ones who were able to look out the window and see the beauty of nature. So we become disconnected from nature. It's easier to believe in God as well if you're surrounded by nature, because there's so many beautiful, now we're seeing a lot of beautiful flowers, and sometimes you're looking at the flower and you're thinking, that doesn't look possible, that a head that big can be standing on a stem that thin, and it has its own distinct qualities and shape of leaf and fragrance, and then here's another one and it's completely different, and it's so amazing, that they've been designed, intelligent design. There's a book, isn't there, Nature's IQ, and it's showing how if you want to, God's left a lot of clues to let you know that He's behind everything. If you want to, you can see the clues and you can realize there's no way this could have happened by accident, There's a big orange fish, and it gets its teeth cleaned by these little blue fish. And the big orange fish looks like a nasty character. Anyone that would go near it, if it saw your hand, I'm sure it would just take a lump out of it. It's got these really... Now the blue ones are able to go in between the teeth and clean it all out, so that saves its dental bills. So the blue fish are allowed to go in and out. And what the book's asking is, why not the green fish? Why not the yellow fish? Why not the blue fish with the black spots? Why only these blue fish? Did they have a board meeting and all the fish were there? And the orange one said, well, I like the blue guys. Anyone else comes near me, they're going to get bunched. And then that went round as a memorandum, Everybody got the memo, okay, keep away from the... Are you blue? Okay, well, keep away from the orange fish. How did they make that arrangement? How did that happen by accident? One day it wasn't happening, the next day it was happening. How did that happen? The nature of a clock is it doesn't partially happen. The clock happens if it's all there in one go. You don't get half a clock that works half as well. It works or it doesn't work. So the mechanism, the material nature, the way it works is everything is symbiotic. It's all interdependent. The same day the flower evolved is the same day the bee had to evolve, because the symbiotic, one cannot exist without the other. So that means if it happened by accident, then they both happened at the same time, which is really... And then we find that it's not just the bee and the flower, there's a lot of other things involved in that as well, all part of the equation. They all had to have happened as well at the same time. And they couldn't have existed independently on their own unless all these other factors were there. So the whole thing starts to really break down. Okay, I'll finish there. Iskon Guru Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Go back to Vrinda ki jai.